make sure you keep a diet of the meaty truth. All right, folks, welcome to the Virtue Signal. I'm Alfonso Rachel with my buddy Bill Whittle. And, in the Virtue Signal, like I said, what we're trying to do is we're trying to make a clear cut definition, if you will, based on something solid against the virtue signals out there who are, forcing us to believe what their perverted idea of virtue is. That stuff becomes the controlling narrative that they have in the culture and in policy. So we gotta try to set the record straight. And I think one of those perversions of virtue that they have is Bill, this whole Beyond Meat, Impossible Meat, this virtue of vegan culture. I've already kind of like had my I've had my beef with these things for a minute, and I'm not judging it. I used to be a vegetarian. I was actually more of a pescatarian. But, but I thought I was being, moral and all that sort of stuff by not eating, Jersey made or anything like that. And, the Jersey made cow. But I saw this video, man, of, what's her name? Carol Adams. I don't know if you've seen this. And, she's giving she went on a full on social justice salad, if you will. No pun intended. Nah, pun intended. About vegan. She's supposed to be giving a defense of veganism, and man, she took it into the misogynist culture. She took it into a full race baiting. I'm like, hey, when you gonna get to the side dish of the vegetables and stuff like that?
So white supremacy is eating a hamburger now.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
For real. And this is where we are. You can't even eat meat. You can't even eat meat without being a bigoted, racist, sexist, homophobe. You can't even eat meat, as far as that goes. So, I mean, what do you, seeing where we are right now, I mean, I guess that's the fashion of the day, the food fashion. And, seeing that right now, I mean, what do you think? These people, definitely, an Impossible Meat burger short of a Happy Meal.
I don't think it's a mystery, but I'm a little embarrassed about fessing up to this, I'm just always been an animal lover. And, I remember when my dad and my brother hunted their entire lives. My brother still does. I said, I'd like to come out one time. He said, no, I don't think you would. And then I realized, no, he's right. I wouldn't. But the hypocrisy of it, of course, is I love a good hamburger and a good steak, and I eat more chicken than mammals generally do. So I'm one of those people that's a little hypocritical about this. When I say hypocritical, I don't mean intellectually hypocritical, and I don't mean morally hypocritical. I don't think there's any moral argument to say that we must be vegetarians, because if we were the only animals on Earth that ate other animals, you might have a point there,
Mm-hmm.
But humans are omnivores. One of the reasons we're so successful, one of the reasons humans spread around the world, is if you think about it, so we'll eat anything. We eat anything and everything. We eat fungus, we eat insects, we eat mammals, we eat birds, we eat fish, we eat squids, we eat everything. And to divide this this biological design feature and to say that this is wrong is nonsense. I just don't like it.
Mm-hmm.
And this may be a result of just plain oversensitivity and overemotion. I sometimes think that the things that upset me are things that upset somebody who's had life too good,
Mm-hmm.
And that whatever qualms I may have about the meat industry are qualms that come because I've never really been hungry in my life. I've said I've been starving, but I've never been hungry. Not real hungry. Now, with that said, it's funny. I have no problem eating chickens, although I'm sure if I kept a chicken, it would change my mind. I feel guilty about eating steak, but I like steak. I was in Norway a couple years ago, and in this restaurant, and in that restaurant, they served whale. I thought, no, I don't think I'm going to be eating a whale. And when I come down to why I feel this way about these particular things, I find myself coming down on the issue of suffering, and it's not even the suffering of death, because when people talk about the cruelty of hunters, and I don't know why this defense isn't made more often. I don't know why hunting and hunters don't make this defense every day. When people talk about the cruelty of hunting, my first response is to say, well, if the hunters went away, the human hunters, deer wouldn't die of old age in the forest surrounded by their loved ones and just peacefully go to sleep. That's not how nature works. When I think about, it just bothers me to see somebody just shoot this animal, and I realize, well, it may be tough to watch that, but it's a lot tougher to watch one being eaten alive. And I've seen that many times. I've seen lions and creatures like that eating other animals alive. That is horrific.
Yes.
So that would be my first response to this. It's like, if this is the world we live in, and to be, I guess what I'm trying to say is to bewail the fact that humans eat other animals is to deny the fact that other animals eat other animals. Right? Now, the argument, of course, is that we have a moral sense and so on, and we do have a moral sense, but we don't have a moral obligation. Let me put that's the way I want to put it. That the people who feel that tenderly towards animals, and I generally am one of them, which makes me a hypocrite, and I understand that, and I'm not comfortable with it, but that's the decision I make when I'm looking at a cheeseburger. But I think you can say, and I have no problem with people saying, that I choose not to eat animals because I find it morally reprehensible. I actually respect that opinion. I don't share it, but it's a consistent opinion. But when you try to take your personal abstinence from biology and apply it to everyone else and make that into a sin or a character defect, that's kind of where I draw the line.
Indeed, man. And the thing is, this so-called virtue it has that sentiment. You identify with the animals, just like you brought up suffering, and people, they don't want to see the animals suffer. And I totally understand that. I don't like the idea either. But in that so-called virtuous state where people are showing how much they care, you have ladies like this, and she's not the only one, trying to tie this to something else to get to piggyback off of that, to get more of a,
that's right.
Trying to use the sexist narrative and use the race baiting narrative to gain a sympathy vote for what it is that she's talking about.
Yeah, it's just silly. That's right. It's a sympathy vote. That's silly.
Yes, it's a lot of sanctimonious, self-righteous nonsense, but that's what they're using these things to take over. As we've talked about before, Democrats have this imagination land that they live in. Everything about them is just so artificial. They're drawn to things just being fake. And I guess that's one of the reasons why they're so good in the movie industry, because that's just how they're wired. They're wired to make
rhetorical intelligence.
Yeah,
that's what Evan Sayre called it.
Yes, So, but the thing is, with this, even with the meat, the Beyond Meat, it's like, okay, you guys are calling it Beyond Meat. Why don't you, if vegetables and fruits and legumes and whichever are so good for you, why don't you just market it as what it is? Why don't you just call it fruits and vegetables? Why are you taking this and trying to make it taste like meat? It's like, that's fake. They're saying that it's nutritious. It is good for you, man. It's just well-seasoned cat food. The same stuff that they're putting in this stuff is the same stuff that goes in cat foods. And notice that cats are getting diabetes and stuff too. So they're doing this stuff, and it's like everything about them is just artificial meat, artificial votes, artificial boobs on artificial men. Everything is artificial women, whichever. That's just what they do. And
they have the appearance of.
Yes.
Right. It's much harder to actually be something than to simply put on the shell of something.
Right. And these things, obviously, Bill, they've turned into like a big problem. And so even when people, as you mentioned earlier, like when we look at our makeup shows us from our dental structure through our alimentary tract shows that we're omnivorous creatures. You see,
if we weren't meant to eat meat, we couldn't digest meat. You
right.
can't feed meat to a squirrel.
Or they'll say that, well, it's not necessary for you to build muscle. Like look at the oxen, look at all those muscles that they have, and all they eat is they have a vegetarian. They're herbivores. I'm like, yeah, but you don't have 4 stomachs either. So you're gonna
number one, and number two, you don't spend every waking moment of your life eating, which is what grazing animals do. Right. Their entire day consists of eating.
Yes. So we're wired totally different. Plumbing is totally different, but they want to make these comparisons and they get mad because some of their ideas, we say, well, you treat us like animals. You guys compare yourselves to animals. So you justify your behavior, you justify your lifestyle based on animals. That's you guys, but here's the thing. And sometimes, and even in the Christian circles, particularly Seventh-day Adventists, who have a lot to do with pushing the vegetarian diet, the vegan diet, and say that that's how we were supposed to be meant to eat. No, isn't.
That's silly.
The Bible,
to say that that's the way we're supposed to be is just plain wrong. It's just scientifically incorrect.
It's totally wrong. And the sad part of it is when they make a moral basis of this, as if this is what the Bible instructs to do. It's like, last I read, Jesus ate meat. Jesus ate fish. Jesus ate the Passover meal, which means he ate lamb. Jesus was a meat eater. So are you saying that you're more virtuous than Jesus? Well, that's the diet that man was allowed to have after the transgression. It's like, no. Before Adam was even made, the distinction of wild beast, animals that eat each other, and livestock was made. And Adam was supposed to classify them, which means that Adam saw wild beasts feeding on each other. Adam had the authority to make livestock out of certain animals. And this is very important to know, Bill. This is very important to know. Why is that? Because what did God say? You eat from this tree, man, you gonna die. Well, Adam had to know what death was. Adam couldn't be like, well, yeah, sure, God, whatever you say. I don't know what death is. Well, God wouldn't be a just God if he introduced a policy to him that Adam could not understand. Adam saw, just like you said, them animals tearing each other apart. Ooh, that sucks, right? I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want that to have dominion over me. Adam had control over the livestock, basically picking which animal lives and which one dies at a certain point, right? He had dominion as far as that goes. And just like you said, it's like man has dominion. I can eat whatever. I can eat the mushrooms. I can eat them berries. I can eat animals. I have dominion. Right? So those things are important to point out. That way, when death takes dominion over man, God's like, look, man, I told you. You knew what death was and you played around with it anyway. Now it has dominion over you. So over and over again, we see these things that shows that that's always been part of our biology. God himself ate meat. He ate meat with Abraham. He ate, it's like he was eating meat. God's never been in a fallen state. People say, well, man can only eat meat because man is in a fallen state. God's never been in a fallen state, but he ate meat also.
I don't buy that fallen state argument for a second.
Right.
There's a lot to unpack here. When I mentioned earlier about suffering, eating meat on a farm, I would have essentially zero problems with, right? Where the animals are out in the pasture and the chickens are running around. When I see industrialized meat, it kind of makes me ill. When you see 20,000 chickens in cages this big, but I eat those chickens. So I'm not in a position to make a moral judgment on people for that. I just do. I feel bad about it, but I do it. And at least I'm willing to admit that. This is the thing about the left and virtue signaling is that I've got this incredible sense of virtue that therefore puts me above other people. No. So I don't like seeing animals live their lives in cruelty. I think that some of this concern that I have is is it anthropological? It's because humans are able to imagine the future. We have these frontal lobes that allow us to forecast the future. In other words, I can see what's happening to those creatures up in front of the line, and I don't want to be in this line, right? Animals don't have that function. They certainly have fear, but they don't have the ability to anticipate. There is no future for animals. They cannot imagine it, and they cannot imagine it because they don't have these frontal lobes. So on some level, I'm putting my human fears into animals that don't experience those fears, and that gives me some comfort. I remember the first The first time because I grew up with Jane Goodall and chimpanzees and these, our gentle neighbors of the forest who just chew on weeds and stuff. And that's what I grew up with. And I grew up with a couple of TV shows like Lance Leake's Secret Chimp, where chimps were on TV a lot when I was a kid. In fact, one of the things about growing up is I don't see nearly as many chimps or as much quicksand as I expected to see when I was a kid. But when footage came out, 15, 20 years ago, of chimpanzee war parties chasing monkeys through the trees and then grabbing them and ripping them apart with their big, sharp, pointy incisor teeth, and then just you'd see a chimp with a monkey arm in his hand gnawing away. My first thought was just kind of this horror, but my immediate second thought was that's actually kind of a relief, because it shows me that this philosophizing and moralizing about it is it's a luxury belief, right? It's a luxury belief, and I'm perfectly willing to admit that. I think one of the reasons that people are so down on hunting and meat eaters to the degree that they are is, as I said earlier, they've never been hungry. If they got really hungry, their attitude towards eating animals would change rapidly. And we should be proud of that, So I guess what I'm saying is, you're talking about all these fake meats and stuff. Look, if they were able to grow meat in a giant, glass cylinder or something, and then I could have a steak that tasted indistinguishable from another steak, and this thing had no consciousness of any kind, if it was the same stuff, I probably would eat that. And I still have no problem eating meat, which I do regularly, daily, but it's still, there's still a sense of unease about it. I'll tell you, and I can tell you where that unease comes from, Zoe. One of the things that I've watched during the course of my life is a sharp increase in our perception of animal intelligence. That really, certainly prior to, World War II, maybe even later than that, animals were just moving meat. They were just meat that moves. When you start to get into animal cognition, when you start to see animals showing, like, just as a small example, right? It's a very, very small, simple example, but I don't know if you've ever seen video of like a cockatoo or a parrot, like dancing when there's music playing. I see that and it makes me go, oh boy, I feel bad about all the chicken I ate now. I hope it wasn't a dancing chicken. But I think ultimately, as I said now 7 times, this is it's a conflict between my biology, which is inherent and designed into me as part of me and so on, versus what you could probably make a pretty strong case for as sentimentalism, right? With that said, I don't like seeing cruelty. I would like animals to be treated, as well as possible, and I mean, I'd love to just come. The easy answer would be for me to come out and say, "Oh, those, patchouli stinking hippies." Give me a throw. My brother's like this. As I said, he's a hunter. I won't use the expression he uses, but he likes his steak really quite rare, and I don't. So I don't know. It's a form of emotional sensitivity that is, if not into sentimentality, it's right on the border there. And yet, I've rescued whatever injured animals I can and gone to a fair amount of expense in terms of time and effort to not only treat them or get them to a vet to be treated or get them to a wildlife rehabilitation center. And I think that's probably the best that I personally can do. I guess everybody has a slightly different opinion on this. And there I sit.
Dig, man.
Waiting for my cheeseburger. I'll tell you what's interesting real quick. I think it's Burger King has something that says it's like the incredible burger, whatever. It's like miracle meat, right? It looks like meat and it tastes like meat and all the rest of this stuff, right? And it's supposed to be indistinguishable from a regular hamburger. And it's been out for a couple years, and I've never once tried it. you would think that if I was consistent with this philosophy, I would try it. It never occurs to me. I look at it and say, I don't think so. I don't think I want that. And I think it was Brian Regan who said, you were talking about how everybody's trying to get things to taste, this tastes just like hamburger, and this tastes exactly like chicken, and this tastes like bacon. He says, it doesn't work the other way around. No one's coming out with a slice of meat that tastes like lettuce.
Yeah.
And using that to this has got the exact same taste as celery. Mm-hmm. So, and not to go on and on, but what that also tells me is that. Well, this is certainly true. Meat consumption is a top of the food chain luxury, right? When you look at human diet throughout history, especially for the great mass of people, it was generally, roots and grass and stuff, and you might get meat once a week or, twice a week. The ability to just order it is also relatively new. But just so there's just complete clarity on this, I absolutely agree with you that this moralizing and this attempt to make other people feel guilty about their biology and about clean kill of animals when the alternative in nature is to be ripped to pieces screaming, is not something that I have ever bought, and it's not something I buy now.
Definitely, man. And the thing is, the word tells us that we're supposed to minister to all creation. So we're not supposed to be cruel to animals. We're supposed to have a sense of compassion. We're supposed to, treat animals a certain way, even if they are for our consumption. Now, the extremist or the moral or virtuous, vegan would say, well, eating animals is cruelty. But just as you have said, it's like, trust me, there's crueler way for an animal to die. But the thing is, this gets down, but they're, like I said, Bill, they're using these things and they're trying to tie these things to promote things that are causing more problems in the culture that they think are virtuous, but it's causing more problems. And right from the outset of our creation, the Lord makes this truth about him. The first thing he's going to tell about us is like, look, you're a man and you're a woman. Okay. Now, when you have people that are going to use not eating meat or the virtue of being vegan and try to tie that to a person's sexuality or their gender or what their appropriate gender is, you can see
or global warming or whatever the case may be.
Yes, you can see those things tied right from the beginning in the first patches of the word. It's like the Lord's like, let me go ahead and say this from the outset right now because people are going to mess with this. And it's not a new thing. This has been since the dawn of civilization. People trying to mess with what God says, this is true. This is true about you. And people have been in rebellion against it ever since. But we have the choice and we have the right to make the choice. But there's consequences from it. And right now they're trying to present an alternative to meat, even grow meat in a lab. But see, here's the thing. And people they may buy into it, because they may feel like, it's a moral thing to do and they'll feel better about themselves.
There's something disgusting about it though, too.
Yeah, it's, it's something very sci-fi channel to it. But here's the thing. Can a person really be sure that they are going to make sure that protein is going to be innately packed with everything that our body is actually familiar with?
Yeah, that's right. Of course.
See, now
this is much more complex than we think it is.
Yes. It's like, okay, so these people are talking about nutrition and what's better for you. It's like, you can't do it. There's a reason why man was made from the ground. There's a reason for that. Everything that's in the ground, man, it's going to be found in living organisms. That's what we're made from that. Our body is made to receive what is familiar. The reason why people are getting all these diseases and stuff like that, mental and physically, is because our body is constantly made to process stuff that it doesn't know. It's like, what do you do with that? You try to open up a program in your computer. If your computer don't recognize it, you're going to get a glitch. All right.
Yep.
So not only is this these things playing out in our bodies where we're having all these diseases, we're seeing it play out in society and people are not recognizing what's right and what's wrong. The ground isn't allowed to rest right. The food we got frankenfood and all these things are going in there presented to us as if it is something better for us.
And sugar and everything, sugar and steak, corn. Yeah. I mean, just, yeah.
Yes. So like I said, these things, they end up toxic in many ways. Toxic for our bodies, toxic for how we interact with each other. All this stuff is being played out, and it's rotten meat, right? It's rotten meat,
smells,
man.
Stinks.
Yes, it does. And unfortunately, a lot of people are they're going for it. So
let me just add one thing as kind of a political point here. that we've been kind of dancing around in terms of the politics of it. It is the nature of progressivism. It's one of the founding pillars of progressivism to believe that you can not only deny your biology, but to oppose it. That you can through force of will or spiritual, prestidigitation, whatever, that you can override your biology. We don't have to talk about this in terms of trans athletes and all the rest of it, and all of this feminization of men and the whole vegetarian vegan thing. All of it is an attempt to wish ourselves out of our biology, and I don't think that can be done. In fact, I know it can't be done. When you see their social engineering attempts to turn young men into young women, I mean, in terms of the behaviors, right? Why are you looking out the window, and why aren't you sharing? You're just a defective girl, basically. Okay. So then these guys go into, they go home and they close the door and they get on their computers, and then they're cowboys and Indians, or they're jumping out of airplanes in their video games. You can't beat the biology out of people. But that's what the left is all about, is denying biology. All of these socialist experiments, like Nazism had the new Nazi, the new man, and the Soviets had the new Soviet man, and the Chinese communists had the great leap forward, all the rest of the stuff. We're going to remake our own biology. It doesn't work. And when you try to do that, it ends up meaning that the people who have this bad idea are going to have to enforce it on other people through coercion, and then they get millions of people dead. The genius of the American system was not that it aspired to change human nature, but rather that it understood human nature well enough to build in mechanisms that went with the flow. This is what people will do. People will tend to want to be greedy. People will tend to want power. And so let's put legal barriers from people wanting to take everything, control everything. So this, I think, is another symbol of, or symptom rather, of the left's disconnect from reality, and how much a part of their entire philosophy that disconnect is.
Indeed, man. And folks, we hope that you found this to be a meaty episode. And if you did, I want y'all to keep in mind, like I said, they're using these narratives to promote things. And this is the key point of, especially concerning the biblical aspect of eating meat. Like I said earlier, we're supposed to minister all to creation. And as we also mentioned, the animal is going to deal with suffering. Now, why? Why is that? Like I said, the animal itself is going to go through this and is going to be made to give up its life. The message in that is that there's going to be someone who is going to come, who is going to be made to suffer and die, and is going to give up his life for our eternal sustenance. That's the message in it. And what's happening in the culture is people are trying to get you away from that. They don't want you to see that. So they try to promote not eating meat as something virtuous. So we don't want to buy into their lie. Make sure you keep a diet of the meaty truth. All right, y'all. So thank you guys so much for Bill, Whittle, and I. Thank you for your support and for tuning in. And we'll catch y'all next time in the Virtue Signal.